The windward plains are shaped by extremes. Seasonal droughts harden the soil like stone, while sudden electrical storms can transform the grasslands overnight. In a world this unstable, survival depends less on strength and more on specialization. Every species here occupies a narrow ecological niche. This young chotacabra, for example, is built for life along canyon edges where moisture lingers beneath the rocks. His permeable amphibian skin absorbs water efficiently, but under the open sun, it also loses moisture dangerously fast. To compensate, he uses his oversized tongue to gather wet clay and mineral sediment onto his forelimbs, forming crude protective gauntlets that help retain hydration and soften impacts during combat. An ingenious adaptation, though one our young bull perhaps trusts a little too much. Nearby, a herd of ceratinoth moves cautiously across the plains. Their heavy cranial armor and reinforced neck muscles suggest generations shaped by predation pressure. The adults maintain a defensive ring around the calves, constantly adjusting formation as they graze. Few herbivores survive long here without cooperation. And somewhere beyond the tall grass is the reason why. A doshaguma patrols the territory, massive shoulders, dense forelimbs. A scavenger and opportunist capable of overpowering most creatures foolish enough to challenge it. Yet even this heavyweight is shaped by the environment. Poor eyesight forces it to rely heavily on scent and vibration, making open plains ideal hunting grounds. Unfortunately for our chotacabra, wisdom usually arrives several mistakes late. In environments where food, water, and shelter are limited, territory becomes more than geography. It becomes survival itself. And across the windward plains, nearly every large creature has evolved some method of defending what it claims. Doshaguma prefers intimidation. Though powerfully built, outright combat carries enormous risk, even for an apex scavenger. A broken limb or damaged jaw could mean starvation within days. So before violence begins, the doshaguma relies on ritualized displays. Deep vocalizations reverberate through its inflated throat sacs, while scent glands along the forelimbs leave chemical warnings across rocks and grass. Large carnivorous mammals on Earth, from bears to hyenas, use remarkably similar strategies to avoid unnecessary injury. Our young chotacabra, however, has not yet learned the value of caution. Spotting the larger beast, he responds with a dramatic threat display of his own. His body rises, the tongue flares outward. Mud-coated fists slam against the ground in a performance clearly designed to exaggerate his size and confidence. Cassowaries and crocodilians employ comparable body language displays, bluffing strength before committing to dangerous confrontations. The effect on the doshaguma is minimal. One glancing blow sends the young bull stumbling backward through the dust. Message received. Elsewhere on the plains, another territorial dispute unfolds. A male Chemetrese carefully preens the colorful plumage lining his tail. Like many birds on Earth, reproductive success here depends heavily on visual health cues. Bright coloration signals maturity, fitness, and parasite resistance. Unfortunately, attractive territory is rarely unoccupied. At first glance, the creatures of these wilds appear biologically impossible. Boxing amphibians, serpents that swim through stone-dry dunes, predators armed with soap-like chemicals. Yet evolution rarely pursues elegance, it pursues whatever works. And in isolated ecosystems shaped by extreme environmental pressure, life often becomes strange. Having narrowly survived his encounter with the Doshaguma, the young Chotacabra retreated into the canyon systems. Here, mineral-rich sediment collects beneath seasonal runoff, providing the raw materials for one of the species' more unusual adaptations. Using adhesive mucus secreted along the tongue, the Chotacabra gathers dense layers of ore and compacted mud onto its forelimbs. The resulting gauntlets serve several functions at once: moisture retention, impact absorption, and visual intimidation. Crude engineering, perhaps, but undeniably effective. Far beneath the northern dunes, another specialist moves unseen: a Balahara. Its wedge-shaped skull and retractable dental plates allow it to swim through unstable sand with remarkable efficiency. Much like Earth's sandfish lizards navigating desert sediment. Entire sections of the desert floor are deliberately weakened into collapse traps, transforming the landscape itself into a hunting tool. Elsewhere, deep within the scarlet forest, a Mizitsune meticulously coats its scales in a self-produced chemical foam. The slippery secretion reduces friction while also suppressing fungal growth in humid environments, an elegant biochemical solution to rainforest life. Even camouflage here borders on the absurd. Juvenile Mimiphyta sway gently among flowering plants, mimicking stems and leaves with startling precision. And towering above them all, the ceratinoth endure lightning storms using elongated dorsal spikes that function as natural lightning rods. Impossible though they seem, every adaptation answers a problem this world created first. To survive in the wilds is difficult, but survival alone means very little to evolution. Life's oldest pressure is not merely to live, but to leave something behind. And across these plains, reproduction drives creatures toward extraordinary risks. The bachelor Chemetrese has finally secured territory of his own. A rare patch of open grassland suitable for attracting a mate. His elongated tail feathers, carefully maintained and brightly pigmented, likely function much like the ornamental displays of birds of paradise or peacocks on Earth. Healthy plumage advertises fitness, resistance to parasites, and access to nutrition. Unfortunately, it also advertises his location to rivals. Another male arrives almost immediately. Both competitors raise their tails high, exaggerating size through posture and lateral body displays. Neither wishes to escalate into full combat. Serious injury during mating season can permanently remove an individual from the breeding population. Yet neither can afford to retreat first. Eventually, instinct overrides caution. Flaming secretions burst across the grass as the two collide in a violent struggle for reproductive access. Not for food, not for territory alone, but for the chance to pass on their genes. Far above the plains, another parent faces a different burden. A solitary Raytheon circles her nesting grounds at dawn. Raytheons are believed to form long-term pair bonds, yet her mate has not returned. Alone, she must defend the nest herself. Even exhausted, she responds instantly to intruders. Maternal defense behavior of this intensity appears throughout nature, from crocodilians to large birds of prey. Because in ecosystems such as these, reproduction is not gentle. It is costly, competitive, and often dangerously close to tragedy. On the windward plains, predators are dangerous. But they are not the ecosystem's greatest threat. That distinction belongs to the climate itself. For weeks, heat has tightened its grip across the region. Water sources shrink, grazing routes shift. Entire herds begin migrating toward distant seasonal wetlands. Even the scavenging baunos struggle to remain airborne in the rising thermal currents, conserving energy wherever possible. Then, the sky changes. Towering dust fronts roll across the plains as electrical storms gather along the horizon. The phenomenon, known locally as the sand tide, transforms the ecosystem almost overnight. Visibility collapses, static electricity saturates the air, and every creature responds instinctively. The Ceratonoth herd forms a dense defensive cluster. Along the backs of mature adults rise elongated conductive spines, specialized structures believed to redirect lightning strikes safely away from vulnerable juveniles. It is a remarkable adaptation, the one born from generations exposed to catastrophic seasonal storms. Beneath the dunes, Balahara retreated deeper into unstable sand channels where temperature fluctuations are less severe. Few surface predators can pursue them there. But the sand tide does not merely reshape behavior, it summons something. Through the dust emerges Ray Dow. Massive wing beats echo through the storm as electrical discharges arc across its horned skull. Specialized conductive tissues running along the cranial structures appear capable of storing and amplifying atmospheric charge, transforming lightning itself into a biological weapon. And suddenly, the plains no longer feel like a habitat. They feel ancient, volatile, almost apocalyptic. A reminder that in worlds such as these, weather is not background scenery. It is an apex force of nature. When apex predators appear, ecosystems change long before anything is processed. Across Earth's history, from tyrannosaurs to lions and large sharks, dominant predators have shaped the movement, behavior, and even psychology of entire animal communities. Scientists refer to this as fear ecology, the invisible influence predators exert simply by existing. And few creatures impose that influence more completely than Ray Dow. Since its arrival during the sand tide, grazing routes across the plains have shifted dramatically. Ceratinoth herds now avoid exposed open ground, favoring tighter canyon corridors despite reduced feeding opportunity. Smaller scavengers disappear entirely during storm periods, while even aggressive species such as Doshiguma become noticeably cautious. The predator has reorganized the ecosystem without needing constant. Far to the northeast, another apex hunter patrols very different territory. A Raytheon glides low above the grasslands at dawn, enforcing a nesting perimeter with relentless efficiency. Much like Komodo dragons or large territorial cats, she expends enormous energy, maintaining control over resource-rich ground. Yet the rewards are substantial: secure nesting sites, stable prey access, and protection for future offspring. Meanwhile, within the flooded waterways of the Scarlet Forest, a Mizitsune moves almost silently through dense vegetation. Unlike the overwhelming dominance of Ray Dow, this predator relies on precision. Its chemical foam reduces friction across both scales and surrounding surfaces, allowing rapid directional changes in waterlogged terrain. Different predators, different strategies, yet all produce the same result. Prey migrates, competitors retreat. Hierarchies collapse and reform around their presence. Because apex predators do not merely hunt ecosystems, they shape the architecture of life itself. For all the terror imposed by giant predators, the true stability of an ecosystem rarely depends on its largest inhabitants. More often, survival rests upon the smallest and most easily overlooked. In the aftermath of the sand tide, life across the plains slowly resumes its rhythm. A Ceratinoth herd stands quietly beneath the morning light as tiny knothpeckers hop carefully across their armored hides. The birds feed on parasites lodged between scales and old scar tissue, while the herd benefits from reduced infection and irritation. Such cleaning relationships are common throughout nature on Earth, from oxpeckers on large mammals to reef fish serviced by cleaner wrasse. Nearby, a pair of track-tail lizards emerges from beneath the sand. Their unusual tails serve multiple functions at once: balance, shade, and deception. The broad undersides contain reflective scales that reduce heat absorption, while the footprints left behind point misleadingly in the opposite direction, a simple but effective anti-predator adaptation. Higher in the canopy, an Amstrygian pair tends carefully to their young. Parenting duties are shared almost evenly, allowing one adult to forage while the other guards the nest. Cooperative care such as this dramatically increases offspring survival rates in unstable environments. And hidden among flowering plants, a juvenile Mimiphyta sways gently in the breeze, perfectly imitating surrounding foliage. Yet perhaps no creature contributes more quietly to renewal than the tiny vigor wasp. Transporting restorative pollen across enormous distances, a reminder that ecosystems are not sustained by monsters alone, but by countless small lives working together unseen. The windward plains are quieter now. Storm season is past, migration routes have stabilized, and for a brief moment, the ecosystem settles into something resembling balance. Our young Chotacabra has returned as well. He behaved like many inexperienced juveniles across the animal kingdom, impulsive, territorial, and far too eager to challenge anything larger than himself. Such behavior is not uncommon. But repeated failure can be a powerful evolutionary teacher. The Chotacabra no longer patrols the plains searching for confrontation. Instead, he moves carefully between shaded canyon pools, feeding opportunistically and avoiding unnecessary conflict. His mineral-coated forelimbs remain, though now used more for foraging and intimidation than intimidation. Nearby, Ceratinoth graze undisturbed. Smaller scavengers pass without panic, and notably, the Chotacabra ignores them entirely. At first glance, it may appear he has become weaker. In truth, he has become better adapted. For ecosystems such as these, do not reward constant aggression for very long. Dominance consumes energy. Injury invites infection. Recklessness rarely survives adulthood. And so, like countless creatures before him, the young Chotacabra has finally learned nature's oldest lesson. Survival is not about ruling the ecosystem. It is about learning how to live within it. Known as Hatzegopteryx, this giant pterosaur may have stood over 15 feet tall. Its skull alone may have stretched close to 10 feet long, almost the size of a small car. It weighed up to 550 pounds, as heavy as a Bengal tiger or even a polar bear. Yet unlike those animals, Hatzegopteryx could still take to the skies. Things even stranger, it was likely more heavily built and far more powerful than its famous relative, Quetzalcoatlus. And somehow, it became a flying monster on Hatzeg Island during the Cretaceous. In this video, we will explore this monster that seemingly broke the very laws of nature. But to understand how a flying reptile became the ruler of an island ecosystem, we first need to travel back to the world that created it. "66 million years ago, Europe looked nothing like it does today. Instead of one massive continent, much of the region was fragmented into tropical islands scattered across the ancient Tethys Sea. One of those islands was Hatzeg Island, a strange, isolated landmass covering nearly 31,000 square miles, roughly the size of the modern island of Hispaniola. Surrounded by warm, shallow seas, Hatzeg was filled with rivers, lakes, dense forests, and lush vegetation. At first glance, it may have looked like a prehistoric paradise. But isolation changes evolution in unexpected ways. With limited space and scarce resources, survival on Hatzeg became increasingly difficult. Over millions of years, many of the island's dinosaurs began shrinking into smaller versions of their mainland relatives, a phenomenon scientists now call island dwarfism. One of the strangest examples was Magurosaurus. While some giant mainland dinosaurs, such as Argentinosaurus, could grow over 30 meters long, Magyarosaurus reached only around 6 meters in length, only slightly larger than a modern horse. They were small, slow-moving animals. Living alongside this prehistoric animal was Telmatosaurus, a primitive duck-billed dinosaur. They were also significantly smaller than their giant Edmontosaurus relatives in North America. Even Struthiosaurus, an armored ankylosaur, was only about the size of a pig. Hatzig Island became one of the clearest examples of prehistoric island dwarfism. On this isolated landmass, giants evolved into dwarfs in order to survive. Unlike North America, where giant predators like Tyrannosaurus dominated the landscape, Hatzig appears to have lacked massive theropod hunters almost entirely. The top of the food chain was suddenly empty. However, in evolution, an empty throne never remains vacant for long. Somewhere above the forests of Hatzig, another predator was already evolving to claim that empty throne. While the island turned giants into dwarves, Hatzigopteryx became enormous, growing into one of the largest flying reptiles ever to exist. Its massive scale and terrifying power turned Hatzig into a death island, a place where giant shadows ruled the skies, and where a flying monster could swallow an entire dinosaur whole. But size alone was not what made Hatzigopteryx so terrifying. Everything about its body seemed designed to ignore the normal limits of nature. Despite its enormous size, Hatzigopteryx was not built like a solid wall of muscle and bone. Like other pterosaurs, much of its skeleton was hollow and filled with air sacs, similar to modern birds. Its bones were incredibly lightweight, yet inside them was a complex network of internal struts that reinforced the structure, almost like the support beams inside an aircraft wing. This strange design allowed the animal to grow to impossible proportions without collapsing under its own weight. And then there was the skull. Based on comparisons with related Ajdarchid pterosaurs such as Nyctosaurus, scientists estimate that the skull of Hatzigopteryx may have reached over 8 feet long. Its beak was not thin or delicate like many flying animals today. It was broad, powerful, and heavily built, more like a giant warhammer. Some paleontologists compare its appearance and possible hunting behavior to modern birds like the shoebill stork, known for its silent, intimidating stare and violent downward strikes. Others compare it to the marabou stork, a scavenger capable of swallowing surprisingly large prey whole. But Hatzigopteryx took those traits to a completely different scale. Instead of elegance, its body seemed optimized for strength. Its massive shoulders and muscular forelimbs also reveal another important secret. Unlike birds such as swans or ostriches, which rely mostly on 2 hind legs for movement and takeoff, giant pterosaurs used an entirely different method called quadrupedal launch. They launched themselves using all 4 limbs. Hatzigopteryx would crouch low to the ground, then explode upward using its enormously powerful forelimbs. This allowed a creature weighing hundreds of pounds to achieve enough force to leave the ground in seconds. Its wingspan stretched nearly 36 feet across, more than 3 times wider than a modern wandering albatross. By every known rule of physics, a creature this large should never have been able to fly. And yet somehow, Hatzegopteryx did. Some scientists believe Hatzegopteryx may have approached the absolute upper limit for powered flight on Earth. But what truly made Hatzegopteryx terrifying was not its ability to fly. It was what happened after it landed. And this is where Hatzegopteryx becomes truly disturbing. Because paleontologists now suspect that this giant pterosaur may not have hunted primarily from the air at all. Unlike modern birds, Hatzegopteryx was perfectly adapted for life on the ground. When its wings folded inward, its powerful forelimbs transformed into massive weight-bearing legs, giving the animal a stable, four-limbed stance. Instead of the awkward movement seen in many large birds today, Hatzegopteryx walked with surprising efficiency, almost like a giant predatory giraffe moving through the forests of Hatzeg. And with a height that may have exceeded 15 feet, each step allowed it to cover huge distances while conserving energy. For a creature this massive, constant flight would have burned enormous amounts of calories. Walking was smarter, more efficient. It allowed the animal to patrol its territory for long periods without exhausting itself. But its greatest weapon was its head. Unlike the long, slender neck of Quetzalcoatlus, the neck of Hatzegopteryx was thicker and built to withstand tremendous force. Its skull was not designed for catching fish. It functioned more like a giant impact weapon. Paleontologists believe Hatzegopteryx may have used its sharp beak to attack prey head-on, delivering powerful strikes before the victim had a chance to escape. Standing silently above the vegetation, it could scan the landscape from far above the smaller dinosaurs of Hatzeg Island. Then, without warning, the giant predator would lunge downward, driving its enormous skull into the prey with devastating force. A smaller animal like Zalmoxes may have been seized in a rapid precision strike, trapped inside the massive beak before being tossed backward and swallowed whole while still struggling. Larger prey required something more brutal. A young Magyarosaurus moving through the forest may have suddenly found itself facing a predator descending from above. One violent impact to the neck or spine could instantly collapse the animal to the ground. From there, Hatzegopteryx could pin the struggling dinosaur beneath its forelimbs and tear into the flesh using the sharp keratin edges of its beak. And perhaps the most disturbing part of all was its silence. It did not need to roar like a Tyrannosaurus. It did not need to chase prey across open plains. Like an enormous shoebill stalking through shallow water, Hatzegopteryx likely relied on patience, height, and sudden explosive violence. It did not need flight to dominate Hatzeg Island. It dominated the island by walking upon it. By this point, Hatzeg Island had become a world ruled by fear. The strangest part was not the violence itself, but the imbalance of it all. Hatzegopteryx did not behave like a traditional theropod. It did not roar through the forests or charge through the undergrowth. Its presence was colder than that, more patient. Megarosaurus descended from one of the most powerful dinosaur bloodlines in Earth's history. Its distant relatives once towered like moving skyscrapers, weighing dozens of tons as they crossed entire continents. But here on Hatzeg, evolution had reduced them into dwarves. Small, vulnerable, trapped on an island where resources were limited and escape was impossible. Hatzeg Island had become an evolutionary trap. The dinosaurs had adapted to survive starvation and isolation, only to find themselves sharing the island with a predator perfectly designed to hunt them. And now, those descendants lived beneath the shadow of a predator that should never have existed. Like a gigantic silent stork, it moved slowly across the island, watching everything beneath it with terrifying calmness. And when the forest suddenly fell quiet, the smaller dinosaurs likely understood what was coming. A herd of dwarf dinosaurs scattered through the ferns as the giant predator approached. One young Zalmoxes froze for a fraction of a second too long. Then the strike came. Using the full height of its body, Hatzegopteryx slammed its massive head down onto its prey. The impact was not simply a wound. The shock traveled directly through the animal's spine and nervous system, collapsing the body almost instantly. Unlike Tyrannosaurus, which had to tear through flesh with serrated teeth, Hatzegopteryx may not have needed to dismember its prey at all. Its enormous throat and flexible jaws allowed it to swallow victims whole, turning a living animal into a single mouthful within seconds. And as panic spread through the herd, the island itself seemed to change. The sounds of insects faded. Every movement in the forest became cautious. On Hatzeg Island, survival no longer depended solely on avoiding predators from the ground. Hatzeg Island had become a place of terror in the prehistoric world. For millions of years, Hatzegopteryx ruled Hatzeg Island without challenge. But evolution has one cruel rule above all others. No empire lasts forever. "66 million years ago, a massive asteroid struck near the Yucatan Peninsula, triggering the catastrophe now known as the Chicxulub impact. In only a matter of hours, shockwaves, earthquakes, and firestorms spread across the planet. Soon after, enormous clouds of dust and ash rose into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight from reaching the surface. The world began to die, slowly. Temperatures dropped, forests collapsed. Plants withered across entire ecosystems, and as the food chain began breaking apart, even the rulers of Hatzeg Island could no longer survive. scavengers, burrowing creatures, and opportunistic feeders could adapt to the new world. But Hatzegopteryx was trapped by its own success. The perfect predator had become too specialized to survive change. The forests fell silent, and eventually, one of the most extraordinary predators evolution had ever created vanished forever. In the end, Hatzegopteryx was not destroyed by another monster. It was destroyed by a world that no longer had room for it. For more than 150 million years, pterosaurs ruled the skies beside the dinosaurs. But after Hatzegopteryx vanished, Earth never created another flying animal remotely like it again. Evolution had reached the absolute limit of what flight could become. To human eyes, the creatures of these wilds appear monstrous. Their jaws are too large. Their weapons are too strange. Their world is too violent to feel possible. Yet Earth itself once belonged to equally extraordinary life forms. Giant reptiles ruled ancient seas. Feathered predators crossed prehistoric plains. Insects larger than modern birds drifted through oxygen-rich forests. Evolution has never been limited by familiarity. And so the ecosystems of Monster Hunter Wilds feel strangely believable because their creatures obey the same biological rules that govern life everywhere else: adaptation, competition, reproduction, and survival. These lands did not create monsters. They created specialists, parents, scavengers, wanderers. And perhaps that is what makes this world feel so compelling. Not because it is fantasy, but because somewhere beneath the scales, feathers, storms, and teeth, it still feels unmistakably alive.